Greetings, and let's not waste any time. Number 11 on my list. Quests and events at different levels. I will ask you, please remember how you played Skyrim for the first time. Remember what happened when you first entered the Market City, murder in the market, and when you first entered the Solitude City, an execution, and when you first entered the castle of the Jarl in Solitude, an audience about a strange noise in a cave. What happened when you first visit Riften? Brynjolf is asking for help in his work. Did you notice the pattern? So many things happen during your first visit that you are literally overwhelmed by events. And do you remember how you first entered the Solitude City on the level 30? Do you remember? Anything? Why? Because most of the time, nothing new happens in the game world. Of course, in Skyrim there were quests that were not immediately available, but after reaching a certain level. But that's not exactly what I'm talking about. I am talking about events. Imagine if you were visiting Dawnstar and heard rumors of nightmares of the townspeople, but it remained a rumor, and the quest was possible to take, for example, on your 7th visit. Imagine, you've been to the city many times, you already know everything in all the shops, all the buildings, you expect nothing new. You want to sell your loot, and you enter the city and notice that the city is empty. All the citizens have gathered at the Jarl's castle. They have lost their patience. They realize that something is wrong. They had enough. They demand investigation. And this scene happens not when you first enter the city, but over time. It's kinda building up. First, it's just the rumors, and over time, the event happens. Thus, it seems that the city is alive. Something is constantly happening, and the player is motivated to come back to the city again. So the player's curiosity does not fade away, and every second in the game is unique and unpredictable. Therefore, the quest triggers in the game should be set at a greater distance. Some tasks and scenes should be available at the beginning of the game, some at level 30, some at level 40, and even on the level 50. When you reach, for example, level 40 in Skyrim, there are still things to do. You can discover, for example, a cave that you've never been in with some interesting quest inside, but nothing is happening in the city anymore. At level 40, cities are dead. It doesn't always have to be a new quest, just an event. Someone argues, a dude hitting on a girl, a fight between drunk citizens, etc. There is a lot of things that can happen in a city, and all of it makes your experience with the game better. Number 12. I don't know why Bethesda hates the mage class so much, because in both TES 4 Oblivion and TES 5 Skyrim, magic is almost ineffective. I'm talking about the cost per spell. A mage who has all the levels into the magic volume and wears enchanted items for the magic volume, has all the perks, can perform about 10 spells of the School of Destruction magic. Of course, there are many factors here, but it's something like this. After 10 spells, you'll have to drink a potion or run and hide until the magic recovers. At this time, the warrior can deal the exact same amount of damage, and if you invest in right abilities, you can do twice as much damage for free. Yes, someone may say that every time a warrior gets closer, one risks losing health points. But warriors are much more protected. They have armor and more HP in general. And let's not forget that there is a class of archers that can deal damage from a distance and also do not spend any additional resources. Well, except for arrows, of course. In general, all spells in TES games are extremely expensive. Of course, there are ways to enchant items to reduce the price of magic for a certain school, but this makes the game imbalanced in my opinion, because without them it's too expensive, and with them it's free. There shouldn't be such a difference, so I hope in TES 6 the developers will finally make mage class less sufferable. In short, we need to rebalance the spell price in TES 6. Number 13 on my list. If we're talking about magic, we cannot but mention how poor magic is in Skyrim. This applies almost to everything. First of all, there is no normal variations of spells in the School of Destruction magic. There are 3 types of spells: Frost, Lightning, and Fire, and several types of damage. The main one is projectiles. You prepare a spell, it consumes a predetermined amount of magic, you release it, and it flies like an arrow at a distance. This is the basic type of damage for spells of low, medium, and high level. There are also rune-type spells that work like a mine. You apply it on the surface, and when the enemy is in range, one receives its portion of damage. It looks interesting, but again, the price of the magic for the spell, and the fact that the rune can be applied only once, and in general it deals little damage, makes this spell as ineffective as possible. For rune-type spells that do not deal damage directly, the magic cost of the spell should be much lower and the effectiveness higher, because this type of spell is much harder to perform than the projectile one, where you essentially shoot at a target. In short, the runes in Skyrim exist just for show, although the idea is not bad. Also, Skyrim has a novice level spell that works like a flamethrower. It's pretty cool in execution, works at a short distance. But the problem is that very soon it just becomes ineffective, because the level of your enemies grow, and you simply outgrow its effectiveness. Again, it's a cool concept, but you can't use it because it's ineffective. There is also a type of spell like Wall of Fire, which is kind of combination of runes and flamethrower. The problem with this spell is that you apply it to the ground. That is again from the category of indirect damage spell. The problems are the same as with the rune spells. And finally, the highest level spells. The two-handed master level spells, which are very difficult to obtain because the quest to obtain them is not very specific, without markers on the map, so most will not complete it without the help from internet. And even if they do, the effectiveness of the spell is again low. 150 points of damage of a master level spell against, for example, a combined spell from 2 hands of an expert level do more than 180 points of damage, plus you can move while casting it, shoot at a distance, and do not need to wait a few seconds to prepare it. Of course, there are also cloak spells, but they deal a small amount of damage and are more suitable for the battle mages, because if a pure mage is approached at the work distance of this spell, then this mage is already dead. And so it turns out that in fact the player goes through the whole game with the magic type like projectiles. I only described the problem. Now about the solution. In Test 6 we need to diversify the ways of destroying enemies. My point is that in Test 6 mage characters should have different ways of dealing damage at different levels. There should be spells like Flamethrower for novice level, adept level, master level, etc. The same applies to cloak spells. We need cloaks for higher levels. The same goes to the other ways to perform spells. Plus, we need to bring back the spells that work on touch from Oblivion. For those who doesn't know, in Test 4 Oblivion, there were spells that worked on touch. You engage with the enemy and literally touch them with your magic. The point is that such spells consumed less magic. That is, you could either deal more damage for the same magic cost, or less cost for the same amount of damage. This would really work well for the battle mages. And we need to bring back the fact that different methods of dealing damage should consume a different amount of magic, depending on how hard it is to perform. For example, runes should deal the most damage for their price. Then touch spells should also consume little or be more powerful. Then short-range spells like Flamethrower should have a medium price of magic comparing to damage. And finally, range magic should be more expensive. The bottom line is that we need different types of spells that deal damage differently, and the harder the spell is to perform, the more efficient it must be. Thus magic will become more interesting to use. Number 14 on my list is a thing that most likely will not be in Test 6. I don't think it will benefit the game. I will explain why later. I am talking about the return of a separate button for casting spells. For those who doesn't know, In Death for Oblivion, in order to give a command to perform a spell, there was a separate button, letter C on keyboard. You may ask, why do you want that? Because it allowed characters who use two-handed weapons, such as hammers and bows, to use magic without putting away their weapons. Battle Mage build had more variety. In Skyrim, if for example you want to create a Battle Mage build, you either are restricted to only one-handed weapon, or you have to stow your weapon, perform a spell, and then equip the weapon again. For example, I wanted to create an archer character who summons creatures that will distract the enemy while I shoot. After a while, I just stopped summoning because it was inconvenient and time-consuming to switch between magic and two-handed weapon. Bethesda will most likely not abandon the hand equipping spells, because in Bethesda's eyes, this is the easiest solution. Plus, you can equip two spells at once, which expands the combat variety of a pure mages. This is certainly true, but it doesn't mean that the idea of equipping two spells at once cannot be implemented with a single button. An example can be taken from slashers. In slashers, it is a normal practice when you can put several actions on one button. For example, one button press is spell 1, double press, second spell. One quick and one long press is a combined two-handed spell. So the problem can be solved, but yet again, I don't think that Bethesda will do this, because it will complicate the combat system. Which is certainly true. In short, this is purely my whim. If I were the game designer, I would not introduce this feature into the game. And that's it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, there is more coming out. Check out my other videos. Now, eat your vegetables and don't be naughty. See you later.